Welcome everyone. Laser Dave here, David Stevens from Trotec Laser for another exciting application-based seminar. Today's application or seminar is Advanced Applications from CorelDRAW. Basically application-based CorelDRAW laser techniques and processes. I have two special guests today. One is Craig Mertens. He is the general manager for Digital Art Solutions, which is they sell all kinds of add-ons and clip arts for CorelDRAW. He's going to demonstrate a little bit of that today at the end of the course. I also have Roger Wambolt. He is the Senior Product Trainer for CorelDRAW, here to help answer anybody's questions at the end of the course. If you do have any questions throughout the course, please feel free to ask them during the actual course, and we will be happy to answer them in order at the end. So let's go ahead and switch to my screen here, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, today's course is application-based CorelDRAW Laser Training. Just so everyone knows, if you have some experience with CorelDRAW, this is definitely a good course for you. There are some previous versions and stuff, which we'll cover here in a few minutes to kind of bring you up to speed if you haven't got to this point. This course will use QR codes. If you're not familiar with QR codes, then all you need to do is turn the camera app on, point the camera at the QR code, but don't take a photo, and a link will show on your screen of your mobile device. Select that link to get quick and easy access to web links, files, and videos. Trotec is always a very social company. If you want to be kept up to date with current events, trainings like this, products, applications, laser materials, scan the QR code and subscribe to your favorite social media platform. We are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Twitter. Little bit about my experience. If you've never joined me for one of my seminars, I've been using CorelDRAW as a laser operator and trainer for over 21 years, working with and mastering the last 16 versions of the software in relation to laser processing materials and applications since version 7. So my primary skill set is operating laser systems. And so that's what we're going to cover today is different techniques on exactly how to make CorelDRAW best, create graphics and designs and images and outlines specifically for running a laser system, platform system of some type. And that's what we're going to cover here today. If you missed my last laser course on CorelDRAW, here is a QR code if you want to scan this. This is great for you operators that are just getting started. If you're just getting started, you're wanting to know about how the tools work, how to set your laser system up to work properly with CorelDRAW. My original course, which I think we aired last October, is online now. You can scan this QR code and you can watch that seminar, go through the questions, and then kind of bring yourself up to speed on the different techniques of just basic operations of running CorelDRAW with the mindset of running your laser system. So scan this QR code. If you have not watched this, or if you're a very new beginner, I do suggest that you watch this these original basic CorelDRAW training course first, and then come back to this course that we're broadcasting right now. This course we're going to cover today is more advanced. It's assuming that you understand and know the basics of CorelDRAW, the basic layouts, the basic toolbars, and just a basic understanding. So if you are not familiar with it, then please feel free to scan this QR code, go back and watch the original one. There's files you can follow along with. You can bring yourself up to speed, and then you can then proceed with this course. This course, of course, will be recorded like always, so that you can access it at any time and then follow along with some of the different processes that I will cover today. Some of the course features I may go through pretty fast, but that's why we record these seminars so that you can go back to them, follow along, pause the videos as needed, and then so that you can learn these different techniques. I've always, in an education standpoint, you see it, you hear it, and then you do it. That's really the best way to learn a new technique or process. So that's what we're going to kind of hopefully go through and teach you the differences of some of these different topics today. We're going to cover an application-based CorelDRAW training, though. This is kind of advanced, but I've broken this apart. Instead of just saying this tool does this and it can help you do that, instead I've picked many different applications that are common issues or processes with running the laser system. And these different techniques and concerns or problems that you may have come across in the software, how to get about them. So we're going to cover some different agendas today, from an application, from creating an outline to creating connected signs and plaques, and how to create stencils, twills using your contour offsets, and how to fix your broken lines from your DXF imports. We're going to get into processes of how to create your design files for example, running your rotary system or your rotary on your laser system so that your graphic will engrave 360 degrees around it. Print and cut file design, how to create relief or 3D design files, grip patterns, as well as some simulations, which is a really fun one, which I'll cover at the end. Now, just a note, make sure that you understand that there are multiple ways to achieve the same results using CorelDRAW. This training is going to show you the process of an advanced laser operator that I personally have found to be very efficient with working with the laser technology. However, if there is a method or process that you like, and you like to use it better in the way to get to the same solution, there is no wrong way to do it in CorelDRAW. If a method works for you, then feel free to continue to work with it. My method is not necessarily the best method. It's just a method that I have found and like the way to do that. And so CorelDRAW has, sometimes 3 or 4 different methods to get to the same solution. If you find a solution that you like to get to the same method I talk about, feel free to go ahead and continue to use that. Now, another thing I want to bring up here is there are 22 versions of CorelDRAW. Not all of them are the same, especially as we go back further and further in time. Some of the features, tools, and capabilities that we're going to cover today may not be available if your version is considerably older. That is the definite advantage of maintaining current versions or more up-to-date versions. The tools and features, compatibility, the import filters have all been updated. You're going to have the ability to handle some of these new tools. And so most of the tools that I'm going to cover and features are going to cover will go back at least 10 years in most cases. But if for some reason a tool is not available, it's most likely because your version is out of date. If you do really stick up with CorelDRAW, I do suggest the subscription version. This way you're always kept up to date. They tend to come out with it yearly. So if you don't have an updated version and you see a process that you really like today and your version is considerably older and you can't do that, that's most likely the reason behind that. Okay, let's jump into it here. Some common laser application processes using CorelDRAW. So as I said before, we are going to be using the latest version, which is version 22. It's version 22, but it's actually called CorelDRAW 2020, which is the year. So that is the version that this is all going to be based on. So like I said, if the version is, or some of the features and locations of the tools are in a different, sometimes the tool is available on the older versions, but it may be in a different location too. So you may have to search that out as well. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, like before, I always provide all the files that we're going to cover today as a download. And so when you signed up, you should have had access to this, but if not, feel free to scan this QR code and then just send the link to your computer, email it to your computer or something so that you can click on that link and download all the files and follow along. This way, when you're watching this at a later date and you bring it up and you want to match the file that I'm processing exactly and then follow along with that file. Some find it easier to use the exact same file and follow along, and then you can incorporate it into your own designs and your own graphics once you've kind of learned that process. I find that running my own file when trying to compare it with a file that I'm watching on a webinar or seminar like this can be more difficult because things will be different. So scan this QR code, download the files. There's 13 or 14 different files. I did downgrade them. I believe I downgraded them all to CorelDRAW X7 or I'm trying to remember. Yes, like version 17, which is like 5 or 6, 7 versions ago. So that's about as far back as I will typically go. If you can't download or open them, most likely your version of CorelDRAW is too old, and so you would need to upgrade to open them. But I have back versioned these downloads as far back as I can go without getting warnings that we're going to lose stability and quality on the file. Okay, let's get going here. I'm going to start with just some basic ones, and as we evolve through this course today, the processes will become more and more advanced, more processes, more techniques. Most of the process I'm going to show you only use 2 or 3 different tools. It may be a process that you have never done before. So I'm going to start here with just some basic stuff. And so the first one I'm going to do is a simple dog. And we're going to convert it to using the boundary tool and a contour tool. So I'm going to open up CorelDRAW here, and we're going to open up a clip art using the Digital Art Solutions clip art here, or you can import any clip art as long as it's vectorized. This does need to be vector clip art for this process to work, but I'm going to import a vector clip art like an EPS or a PSD, or not a PSD, but Adobe Photo or what's the word? PDF is the word I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a boundary around this. A boundary does a quick outline around the characters. Then I'm going to go to Effects, then Contour, and then I'm going to do a contour offset. A contour offset is going to give me a direct offset around this object. In this case, I'm going to do 1 step to the outside. I'm going to convert the color to red with no outline or no fill, and then I'll hit apply. What this does is the boundary gives us a quick outline, and then the contour gives us an offset. We do need to break that contour apart and delete the original one, because the laser will see that red line as an additional cut line, and I don't want to do that. So this is a quick and easy method. Once I have got the contour done, I can then go into my laser software, hit print, select the material. In this case, I'm going to just do a maple wood, and I'm going to show you the entire process. And so what we've done is we've imported a vectorized clip art. We've done a quick contour around it, or we did an outline around it. And then we did a contour offset, deleted the original boundary outline, and then cut that product. And so the laser sees this as the black engraving and the red cut. And so very, very quickly, you're able to take a graphic and create an offset to it, and then engrave that and cut it out. So if you're making a simple little keychain or graphic that you want that, because I don't typically want to laser cut right along that black edge. If I did that, it would look funny. And so the boundary tool works exceptionally well. If you take most clip arts and just try to convert it to an outline, you're going to find all the different little components are going to outline. And so it's difficult to isolate that outline. So the boundary tool quickly creates the outline, and then the contour effect makes an offset of that with a perfect offset of your dimension, and then allows me to quickly engrave and cut that out. And so within seconds, I'm able to design my graphic, create an offset of it, and then send it to the laser, cut and engrave it with a contour offset, creating a finished graphic like this. Here's another way to do an offset or an outline. This is a very, very popular application. And it doesn't matter if you're doing an award plaque or if you're doing a cut outline. How do you create an outline of an object? I run into this all the time. And the problem is, if you take a photo of an object, it's never quite right. You're going to get your angle of your camera is never going to be quite right. And so what I will typically do is I will scan my object. And the reason I use a scanner bed, not for the quality of the graphic, by no means. It's never going to look that great. What it does is it gives me a perfect one-to-one offset of a graphic or an image. And so if it'll sit on a flat bed scanner and you scan it in, it's going to give me an exact ratio. And the reason I want that ratio, especially on something like this, say I'm creating a toolbox with my laser system. and I need a cutout to create the foam cutouts for the tools to lay in. Well, I could measure that tool and sit there and draw it by measurement, which is very, very time consuming, or I can scan it in and then I can outline it and then I can cut it out. And let me show you what I mean. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tool, stick it on a scanner bed, and then I'm going to click a scan and just run it, scan it as a JPEG. And then I'm going to bring the scan into CorelDRAW. I've already removed the background on these to make it look a little nicer. Normally the scans don't look this nice, but then to outline this, there's no quick and easy way to do this. The Bezier tool, as I just showed you, is probably the fastest method to create that. So zooming in to the graphic, typically what I like to use is the Bezier tool, because anytime you click, it's going to create an outline. If you click and drag, it'll create a curve as well. And so what I can do is I can literally just start clicking around my objects. And yes, it will create a little bit of corners, but we can go through and clean this up as we need. And so clicking around a graphic like this, typically a tool like this is going to take me around a minute. So it's not heavily time consuming, depending on the complexity of the graphic. You know, the more complex the outline is, the longer it's going to take. And I've sped it up a little bit here on this footage just to kind of get this done quicker. I'm not doing this live by any means. I'm not this fast. But once you are finished going all the way around, I have now created an exact 1-to-1 ratio of this scanned image. Now I can now go to my tool, my color palette here, and convert it to a red outline to cut. And then I'm going to go to my shape tool, and if the shape tool allows you to quickly kind of delete some of the nodes. And when you've got an object like this and you delete the nodes, most of the time it's going to follow most of that path. And so it kind of gets rid of those little points. Or if you click and drag while using the Bezier tool, you're going to find that you can also get curves. Here's again doing the same process on the screwdriver. Screwdriver's a little quicker because it's got some nice straight lines. And I can get around that as well. Once I have all my tools outlined, the nice thing is if you're making toolboxes for a living, once the tools are done, you save this as an archive. And so you have a specific tool and you can kind of position them now anywhere you want on, say, your toolbox. And so I'm just doing 3 tools. I'm going to create an outline around it. Let's convert that to red. I like to use red as my cut path. And then I'm going to send that to the laser, just cutting out a simple piece of 1-inch thick polyurethane foam in this case. Foam works really well, cuts beautifully with the laser system. But I now know I didn't even need to double check measurements by any means after I was done tracing around this, because I know the scanner is going to be a 1-to-1 ratio. You can do this with a camera. If you take a straight on photograph and then trace around it with a camera image. If you do it with a camera, I do suggest measuring your tool afterwards to make sure that you don't have any angling or skewing or scaling, because the graphic will be skewed quite a bit if you don't get it perfectly straight on with your camera. And it'll also come in much, much larger. So that's a great method of taking a scanner, placing a product or an object on top of it, and creating an outline. I could use this also, instead of just doing it for a toolbox, maybe I'm using it for a template. Maybe I needed to cut out a template for creating a holder for this screwdriver that I'm going to start engraving. It may not be for, for displays or for a toolbox, for example. The process is the same. Anytime I have a strange object, I typically will stick it on a scanner bed, or take a photo of it and then trace around it. If I take a photo of it, I will then have to measure the tool or the object that I'm doing and then make sure that the graphic is scaled properly. And then I can send it to my laser and cut it out for a toolbox, or I can cut it out to create a template or a graphic for that. And then, of course, I'm going to save this. If I'm making toolboxes now, once that tool's done, I don't have to do it again. Once all your tool sets are done, you can mix and match and arrange them as needed onto your page in CorelDRAW, and then cut out to your heart desired. But it does take 2 or 3 minutes per tool or object. The more complex ones are going to take more time. Here's a few examples of some of the other ones I've done. The gun kit is another very popular one. And then on the side of the gun here, this was just a little BB gun. When I outlined it, I also, instead of filling it and cutting it out, the gun part I actually cut out, and then there was foam behind it. But the the little tools that are on there, I just turned it black and filled it and then engraved it as well. So you can engrave out foam so the pocket is not as deep. Say I don't want to cut all the way through. Process is the same, whether you're engraving out the graphic or on it. But the reason I cover this is because, like I said, I mean, if you've got a strange object, whether it be a plaque that you're creating, whether it's something you want to physically cut out, a template you need to make, this process of creating an outline around the object you're working with is invaluable to create everything from then on. Yeah, if you're doing one up and use like your red dot pointer or a camera to position something, that's great. But if you want to create a template, you do need to create an outline of that graphic in order to make those templates or to cut out those outlines in order to position them on the laser accurately. All right. Moving forward here, here's a simple connected sign file design. So we're going to use the contour and then the welding tools, the front minus back welding tools, to show you how to just kind of connect signs and graphics and stuff like that. And so that you can take just simple text and a simple outline, connect it together to create dimensional, three-dimensional type signage or graphics or components of some sort. So for this file itself, all I'm going to do is I'm going to start it from scratch. We're going to go to our text tool. I'm going to type some text. This works mainly, especially if you're connecting it the way I'm doing here, it's going to mainly work with uppercase. Lowercase, you're going to deal with some of the, like the I's and the J's and the dots that'll fall off. And so this process tends to work really well with just uppercase type lettering and fonts. So I'm going to pick a bold font in this case, since I want the letters to stand out. So I'm going to go to an Arial Black. We're going to scale it down to a little bit smaller in size. And now we're going to go ahead and create an outline around it. So I'm going to go to my rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag a rectangle around my graphic, approximately just touching the top and the bottom of the graphic. And I'm going to click on the tool to where it's just touching. I don't want to go too much, but I want it to be just touching because we're going to actually trim it so that you saw the original graphic here. It is actually going to be connected to the outside ring, which is going to hold it in place. I'm going to go to my shape tool, grab the corner and just drag down here. And that will give me a nice radius around the edge. Now I'm going to hit the C, which is going to center it. When I select both the objects together and hit C, it will center left to right. E will center up and down. Then I'm going to select just the outline. I'm going to go back to my contour like we did before. And this time I'm going to select just the outline, click on outside contour. I'm going to do an offset, set about 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to hit apply. And this is going to give me an exact offset of 1/2 inch outside to create my frame. Then I'm going to go to object and then break that apart so that I have 2 separate points. Now let's take my text. Let's right click on red, left click on the slash at the top to get rid of the fill. And then I am going to do the same with my outline. So we've got all red lines because red lines I typically use, and it's just personal preference. Then I'm going to select just the inside line and the wording. And then I'm going to click front minus back, which is right here, or front minus back. And when you do that, it's going to take those 2 components that I selected and it's going to weld and trim those together. It's that simple. You want to make sure you're centered properly inside there. And then, of course, you can send that to the laser. And the laser is going to, of course, cut whatever the outline in whatever material you select out. And so it's going to cut all the inside cuts out. And then it's going to do the outside cut. And this is going to be a great little type of signage type system that could be placed into it. All those individual pieces will be cut out, but it's a very quick and easy method to create a signage type graphic or dimensional letter type graphic held together with a frame. This would work just as well if you put a block along the bottom and you wanted the letters just to stand on their own. And in that case, I would take the letters and just draw a box. And then in that case, you can just use the weld button and weld them to it. In this case, I need to use front minus back in order to get just because I wanted the inside to stay and not just to weld together. So there's a lot of different tools up at the top there for allowing you to trim front minus back, back minus front, the weld commands and to create different scenarios and offset depending on how you want the graphic to be welded together. In this case, I needed the inside, which is the front minus back. So simple process can produce very, very nice looking finished products. In this case, a nice little sign. And of course, you can scale this up to as large as your laser system can go. You can cut it out as big as you'd like, or as small as you like. Okay, moving forward, similar type scenario as the outlines, but this case I'm going to show you how I would create a simple plaque. You get a nice square plaque. It's easy because it's square, but sometimes you have different shapes, and this is kind of the same process of doing the tools that I showed you earlier. The tools, I had to create an outline in order to position my graphics, for cutting out or for cutting those tools out. In this case, I still need to create an outline in order to position my graphics for engraving. And so this is a case where I have already scanned the graphic, in this case, the plaque. It's a perfect 1-to-1 ratio, so it's sized right on the screen. And then what I'm going to do is snap to the center, and I'm going to hold Control and Shift at the same time, which is going to drag it. And then I'm going to use my circle tool and drag that circle out. Then I'm going to hit Control D, which will duplicate, and then Control and then Shift, and then drag each shift out. Control D again, and then Control and Shift. Control and Shift maintains your center point as you're dragging. So like I say, this kind of moves a little bit fast, and so I do suggest that if you're going through this later, definitely follow along. I put all the quick keys that I'm using at the bottom as I'm going through this. And then I'm going to drag away my photograph. And so what I've done is I've now created kind of a duplicate of the award plaque. Now I'm going to take some graphics that I already have. They've already been sized, but you may need to size and scale them. And I'm going to snap them right to the center of this graphic. And what that does is, because my center graphic is already right, the snap tool, in this case, it liked to snap to my star, so I had to manipulate it a little here. There we go. Now the text, we're going to use a different method here. In this case, I got a radius, so I'm going to select the text first. It's already been sized to kind of fit. Then I'm going to go Text, Fit Text to Path. And I'm going to just move my mouse kind of down where I want it. And it's going to kind of find the nearest path around the object. The little red line, make sure that it's centered. And then I'm going to go ahead and click, and it'll drop that into there. Now I'm going to do the same to the bottom one. Select the text. Zoom in a bit here. Then again, Text, Fit Text to Path. And now we're going to do the separate one here. The reason I want to do these as two separate pieces is because, as you can see here, it's kind of upside down. Once I drop it into place here, we can then mirror this graphic. So once I've got the text to path, then I will mirror the text. Oh, wrong one. There we go, mirror it. If it does offset a little bit, the nice thing is if it's still connected to that path, you just grab it and drag it up and down until you get the little red line in the middle, indicating that it's centered, and then offset in between. And now we have it. We've taken and we've created an outline. We have used Fit Text to Path to create the outline around there. And we've used Snap to center the graphics to the center. And you can snap it to the center, and then you can grab that graphic in the middle too if it's too big or too small. And then while holding Shift, you can drag it up or down, which is going to kind of hold it in place as you drag it up and down as well. But this way, it kind of shows you how you can take a scanned graphic or a photo of a graphic that's been scaled properly and measured so that it matches that plaque. I created blue outlines to kind of identify where all my circles were. And then I went ahead and engraved this onto a plate. This is a brass plate, so it's painted brass. So the laser etched away the paint to expose the brass behind it. And some of these I'll show you the laser process. Others I'll just show you the finished result. Here's another great one that I get all the time. You find a cool clip art online. It's funny is we were just talking before this course about a website called clipart.com. They're notorious for having tons of clip arts, but they're horrible in quality in the fact that they may look good on the screen and they may be vectorized, but when you bring them in for a laser, they don't work well. When you take a graphic like this is just a simple little pink and purple frame that I brought in. But when I brought it in and then converted it to an outline, you see everything was just hidden. So the white fill was over the top of the outlines. The problem with this is if you can't see it and you're going to cut it with the laser, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it won't cut. So if there's a line behind a white fill, the laser will still cut that line. And if you don't know that, then you're going to ruin your product. And so here's a good example. What I've done, I'm going to bring in the clip art. So it's just a PDF in this case. Most PDFs, if they're created from a vector format, are going to be vector format. But if I grab this and kind of start pulling at it and it's ungrouped, you're going to see there's all kind. It's a mess. But I want to be able to cut this out. So how do I quickly do that? So I'm going to leave the original. I'm going to hit Control+D, and that's going to duplicate it. I always leave the original because I kind of want it as a baseline to keep an eye on what I'm doing. I'm going to right click on red, left click on the slash, and it's going to really show me all the mess here. Well, the quickest way to fix this is the virtual segment delete tool. This is a great tool because I can just drag, and everything within the boundaries of that outline, it will instantly delete. This is an awesome tool for getting rid of those lines that you don't want. Now, I'm going to use the Smart Fill tool to just click in between this area here and just click that. Then I'm going to click my circle, and it'll just fill up those boundaries. And that's what I want. In this case, I'll grab that, hold Shift, grab my circle, and then drag that aside. So what I have done now is created a laserable ready or vinyl ready type art. Let's go ahead and click on our outline, get rid of our fill, and I now have a clean, finished, laser cut ready piece of art. So from the original one to a very, very quick process, I used the virtual segment delete tool. That virtual segment delete kind of just instantly deleted everything that was within a boundary. So anytime you see another line, when you hit the virtual segment delete, it's going to delete everything between the two line segments. So if you want to get rid of a line that is already there, just click that button. It is an awesome tool. In my basic one, I cover it more in depth on using that tool, when you can use that tool. If you haven't seen that, definitely worth the watch to really kind of go into depth on some of these tools and what they do and how they can help. But this is a great type of application where you brought in a clip art. It's definitely not the quality that you want. It's still good, clean art in the fact that it is vector art, so you can edit it. It's not pixelated art, which is a whole nother issue. But just because it's vector art doesn't necessarily mean it is laser ready or vinyl ready type art. Vinyl ready and laser ready work very similar in the fact that they need to be a clean, concise outline. No, you can't have a line behind a white box. Just because it's behind it doesn't mean it won't laser cut or mark. So you need to make sure that you ungroup, get rid of any fill, make sure there's no hidden lines or lines behind an object before you go to laser cut it. So if I were to cut this out, it would actually just cut each of the individual lines. Here's another question that I get all the time is, how do I take like a simple graphic and make it laser stencil ready? So if I cut a graphic out, a lot of times, you know, the outline of an object is going to cut completely away, and then any types of centers of bees and the center of objects inside of a circle are all just going to cut away. If I wanted to create, and here's a good example for something that maybe a logo wants to be created into a stencil to then put on a window and then paint it over, for example, to put onto that window for a sign or, you know, marketing type process. How do you quickly and easily create an object to do that? Again, the graphics always need to be vector art for this process to work. So, but just because it's vector art doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be laser cuttable and then able to basically create it into a stencil. Also, just because the font is not a stencil font, I don't want to go in and change the look of the brand or the graphic. I need to be able to take their font, their logo, and still keep the entity of that graphic and their font, but still make it a stencil. So how do I quickly and easily do that? So I'm going to show you this process. I've already imported the graphic. And so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring the graphic in. Let's right click on red. Again, it's going to be for laser cut. Left click on the fill. And this is really going to show me what is going to laser cut. Let's go ahead and I'm going to combine everything together. And this is in order for this work, you need to combine it. Then let's go ahead and start making a stencil. The quick way I have always found, this is personal preference, is I just create a box. And so in this case, I'm going to create a box where I want my cutouts to be. And so I'm going to pick a few key points. And I like to, let's fill the box black. It makes it easier to see here. And then I'm going to now identify anywhere around that box is going to be cut out. So I'm going to hit Control D and I'm going to snap it to the other side. And so that area is also going to be cut out. So let's grab that same box, Control D again, which will duplicate. And then I'm going to grab the top of it and I'm going to snap it to the other side. Again, Control D. So I'm doing the same size box. And once I've created one, I'm using the snap feature and I'm snapping it to each one. So let's grab this side and this side, hold Shift. And I'm going to drag this down while holding Control and snap it to the bottom. And you can see both sides are now done. Control D again. And let's put one right in the center, again, snapping to the midpoint. As long as the box covers the red lines, we're good. It doesn't have to be centered. Now for the font, same type of setup. In this case, I'm going to create kind of a thin rectangle, about no smaller than about 50 thousandths of an inch. Which is about 3 millimeters, because the lasers handles it really well. And then once I've dragged that line, I'm going to do the same around all my fonts and just kind of snap it to the center. Control D. And once I've kind of designed my graphic, I want to match that same look all the way across. And so I'm just going to take that same graphic and I'm going to go through, in this case, all the different letters that have an inside entity, like the inside of a B or the O. I didn't necessarily need to do it on the C, but I'm just showing you the process. Now for the A, you can do it all the way through here. But in this case, to make a little bit different look, I'm going to drag that box down so that the box is just through the center part. And then we'll do it on the D here at the end. Now, once we have all of our little black boxes, I'm just going to drag a box over everything, and then I'm going to hit Trim. When you do that, go ahead and hit Trim. It's going to trim all that outline. That's why we combined it at the beginning. And then let's go ahead and delete all of our black boxes now, and then hit Delete. And you're going to see that it trimmed away every aspect of where I had those little black boxes, creating a perfect stencil. And this is great now because I could cut this out on the laser. In this case, I'll stick a piece of paper in the laser, cut it out onto a piece of paper. Laser goes through and cuts through the piece of paper, because now when I go to pick up the finished piece, I now have one solid stencil. And this would work on any graphic. Again, the graphic needs to be vectorized. Has to be a vector graphic. And then, of course, I need to just go through, but that's a quick and easy method to create a little trim out the areas that are going to give you the most stability and keep the graphic in place. Don't go too small. Your kind of your threshold of your lines, like down the center of the B and the R here, is about 50 to 60 thousandths of an inch, or about 2 to 3 millimeters, I would suggest, or 2 to 3 millimeters you can get away with, 60 thousandths of an inch in size. And what that is going to do, I don't go smaller than that because the laser you'll be too thin, and in most materials it won't hold itself up. So you need stability for that. And so that is the process, creating a simple trim, and then to create a stencil around an object, and then send that file to the laser. I typically will always keep the original as well. Don't just modify the graphic. Save that graphic or duplicate it or keep it as a backup too. If you do mess up, you can always bring in that original graphic and start over. Here's another popular application, simple process of creating two-layer poly twill. I take the Stahl's brand pressure-sensitive poly twill. Here's a QR code if you're interested in twill in the lower right-hand corner, and I will create a two-layer outline so that the laser cuts through both layers, and then we do two different colors. So the laser will cut through one layer, and then the laser will cut through both layers, and you can weed out the difference to create these two-color heat transfer or iron-on or stitch-on type products. And so this is a very simple process in CorelDRAW using the contour and the text tools. It's pretty simple. Let's just go ahead and grab the text tool and type our graphic. This is typically just a nice college solid font that I'm using here, traditionally on sports type jerseys. Let's go ahead and right click on blue, left click on the slash at the top, get rid of our fill. Reason I'm doing blue is because I want blue to cut through one layer, and then I will use red to cut through both layers. And that's what color does for you on a laser. Color is a different operation of process. Then we're going to go to our object and then contour again. Offset. In this case, I'm going to do an offset about 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters. I'm going to make it a red outline, and we'll hit apply. Now, red outline is going to cut. In this case, now I have an instant contour. It automatically welds itself to the outline. This is great. I do have a few little components inside that I don't want. I can break that apart and delete them. Or in this case, I find it easier to just scale it down the size until they're gone. And then once they're gone and you get the exact look that you want, we can then now break it apart. And so we'll go up to Object, Break Contour Apart. And now I can scale it back up. With the contour attached to it, it will automatically put those back in if I were to make it large again. So now that it's breaking apart, I have the two different colors. We'll then go to the laser. We'll hit print. We'll go into the laser system. In this case, I have created my own 2-layer twill setting. The blue will cut through the first layer. The red will cut through the second layer. Just drag this into our job control software. And then I'm going to take the two different poly twills and I'm going to apply one layer to the next layer. And then you need to tune your laser system to go so the power settings are right. And this is actual speed on the cutter. It cuts extremely fast. There's the cut, the outline. Now it's cutting the red. And once I'm done, I just go ahead and pop this out. And then you would weed off what you don't want, either the outside or the inside. The nice thing about the poly twill, it's got a pressure sensitive adhesive on that after you're done, you can iron it and it sticks together permanently. Or of course you can add it to a sewing machine and stitch it on afterwards as well. You can of course weed it in the opposite direction if you'd like for the opposite color aspect. It just takes a little bit more weeding. Here's another one where I did 3 contour. And so instead of doing 1 step, I did 2. So I did 3 different colors. And then I assigned a different laser power setting to all 3 colors. The laser cut through 1 layer, which is the green, 2 layer, which is the silver, and then 3 layer, which was the pink. And then you had to weed them off afterwards. The hard part in this case is finding the exact power setting on your laser to go through 1 layer, but not going through the layer below it. It takes a little bit of trial and error to do that. But once you've got the dialed in settings and then you save that setting, you can produce some stunning effects. And this can, of course, be stitched on, heat pressed on to a jersey or a graphic or a hat, whatever it is that you're doing with this process. But that's the flow through process of creating the graphic in CorelDRAW, all the way through weeding it and pulling it out of your laser. All right, switching gears here to a little more a common issue that I run into, especially when bringing in DXF images into CorelDRAW. DXFs are notorious for being problematic. They look fine in most cases. However, a lot of times when I bring them in, and let's go ahead and import it and show you what I mean. When I bring a DXF in, a lot of times, especially when I download it or pull in the graphic in this case, you're going to find that it has a lot of issues. And the issues is the DXFs tend to be tons of line segments, lots and lots of little individual line segments. And so if the laser were to if I were to send this to the laser, it would end up cutting these lines 3, 4, 5 times and it would jump all over the place because there's all kinds of overlapping lines. With a laser system, if you have 3 overlapping lines, the laser will cut 3 times. So we don't want that. And so I could break this apart. I could try to combine it all together and stuff like that. But it's definitely a troublesome. So most cases, anytime I import a DXF, make sure it's the right size. The first thing I do is go right to the Smart tool, Smart Fill, and then I just click my graphic. And this is basically going to fill the boundary in between it, eliminating all the mess that you have from those types of graphics and then just dragging it aside. Dragging it aside now, I will delete the original graphic, and I now have a perfect representation of that DXF without the mess, without the overlapping line segments. It's also going to give me a much cleaner laser cut because each of the individual entities now are one solid graphic. And so the laser will go around and cut them in order, where if you have lots of little pieces, the laser may jump around, your quality won't be as good. And so here I cut it out a piece of black ABS plastic. This is an industrial fan cover. And you cut that ABS plastic out and you get a nice clean finished result when you're done with that, without the mess, the extra heat, the laser cutting through multiple pieces, even though it's already been cut, just because there's multiple lines there. So if you ever sending a file to your laser and you find your laser cutting 3 and 4 and 5 times in one spot, it's because you have 3 or 4 or 5 lines. And those lines may be combined, they may be grouped together, so you don't even know it. So I find that with a DXF, and sometimes other files, depending on how they were created or how they were generated, especially a lot of times, a lot of the 3D rendering softwares out there these days will export a 2D object as a DXF. And again, you're going to get sometimes hundreds of little line segments. And so the Smart Fill tool is ideal for just clicking in the center, duplicating that object, or you can use the boundary tool as well if it's just an outline. In this case, I needed to do both inside and outside, so the Smart Fill worked better. Okay, here's another very common project in CorelDRAW, generating a print and cut file. This is becoming extremely popular. Over the years, it's gotten more and more popular. Most laser systems these days have the ability to add a camera system to it. Those camera systems find fiducials or registration points so that when you print something on a printer, whether that be a printer that prints on acrylics or woods or just a printer on paper like I'm going to show here, then I want to use the camera to find and register that graphic so that it cuts perfectly. And that's where this is coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the process of how to generate a simple graphic using a clip art, and then create your registration points, and then breaking your part apart, so your graphic apart, so that you have your cut file to send to the laser to cut those products out, and then your print file you can send to your printer to print it out, whether it be, again, on paper or whether it be on acrylic or wood using like one of those fancy UV printers. So this is a simple process. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my page size to match that of my printer, in this case, not my laser, and then I'm going to bring in my clip art. So in this case, it's a little guitar clip art PDF that I have here. We'll hit import. And we'll bring that graphic into my CorelDRAW, including all the layers, and importing the text. And I'll just click in here. You can size it and scale it. In this case, it's already done. It's multi. If I were to break this apart, it's going to be a mess. So in this case, I'm just printing it. And the next thing I do is I need to create registration points. Now with Trotec, the registration points just need to be round black circles. These brown block circles need to be no more than 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters in size, or smaller. You can be slightly smaller and they'll still work fine, but we don't recommend anything larger. So I'll draw a single 1/4 inch circle. It doesn't matter where we place it, anywhere on the field. In this case, I do want to fill it black, so we'll fill that black. And once I have one circle done, we'll hit Control+D, and that'll duplicate it. And then I'll hold Control while I go around to the other side. And so you want I recommend at least 3 or more registration points. The more points you have, the more accurate it becomes. Something as simple as this guitar, I will typically do 3 or 4. So we'll do 4 of them here. I'll duplicate those 2 and I'll put them just outside my graphic. And so we now have our print file created. Now we can do this into 2 different layers, but I'm going to show you a more simple process here, and I'm going to do it as pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my graphic that's ready for the printer. It's on a piece of standard copy paper, and I'm going to hit copy. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom of my page here, and I'm going to hit the little plus arrow, and I'm going to make a separate page, and I'm going to call it cut. And you can right click on these pages and rename them like you saw here. And I'm going to hit edit. And I'm going to hit paste. This doesn't require the layers, and layers is going to work well as well. So in this case, now I want to make my cut file for the laser. So I can use the outline tool or the boundary tool like I showed you before, or in this case, I can break the clip art apart and delete all the elements away until I have just the black outline. And you don't want to move this. It's got to match the registration points. In this case, I'll right click on red, left click on the fill, or the slash to remove the fill. And now I have created a cut line. Now I'm going to take my 4 registration points. I'm going to right click on black, and I'm going to left click on the slash at the top. So the camera needs to see an outline for the laser cut file and a fill for the print. So we now have our laser cut file and we have our laser print file matching one page over the next. This is a very easy way to create a graphic for both. So print and cut. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and print our graphic. So now we'll go back to our print one. We'll hit File, Print. And we're going to print this right to our desktop printer in this case. I've just got a little color printer. And we'll print it to my printer. So this can, like I said, it's going to be on paper. We could adhere this paper to a piece of plastic or acrylic if we want to, make it rigid if we want, or we could print it on a UV printer. Then I'm going to go to my laser. I'm going to put my camera on. You do need a camera for this process to work. It's a simple process. And then we're just going to place it into the laser. And then we're going to go to our second page here, which is our cut. I'm going to select this page. Again, an outline on the black for the registration points and a red cut line. We'll hit print. And then we're going to send this to the laser. Now, when you select the material in the laser system, so we'll go into the laser properties manager here. And I'm going to select the material. But in this case, we'll click on paper, standard paper setting. But the difference is I need to turn the actual color black into the registration mark. And this will only show up if you have a camera. And then we'll hit OK. So I'm using the standard paper setting, but I'm going in and telling the color black. And then I'm going to hit print selection because I only want to print that one page that I have selected. And then we'll go to the laser. We'll hit the red dot pointer underneath. The red dot pointer needs to be somewhere near one of the registration points. And then I'll drag it to the field. And that red dot pointer is on the cursor on the screen. And then what you want to do is you want to get one of your registration points to where it's touching it. And the rest will be automatically done. And then we'll hit start. The camera then goes out and actively finds all the registration points using the camera, and then sizes, scales, skews, and rotates the digital cut file so that we got a clean laser cut ready to go file. And it's going to give me perfect accuracy. There's no other way to get this type of accuracy. In this case, this has no bleed, which means the laser has to be spot on so that when I pull this out here, there is no white left over on the guitar and there's no color left over on the white. So we needed to get an absolute perfect offset. You're never going to be able to do this with a red pointer or any other method. And so that is why this is such a advantageous application. And this process kind of shows you the process of designing the graphic, the print file, duplicating that graphic into a separate page, creating a cut file, sending both of them to your printers, one to your inkjet printer or your UV printer, and printing that graphic, the other to the laser, identifying the registration point with the red dot pointer, and then cutting it out with your laser system. So that is the process of doing that. Again, these files, every file that we've had so far are included in the download at the beginning of the course. So you can download those files and you can follow along, send it to your printer, or if you have future aspects of getting a camera added onto your laser or adding a laser with a camera, you will now know how to make the process for that. Now, as you get more and more advanced, you can also do this process with layers. And so layers is the ability to basically shut off one layer and show your print layer and send that to the printer and then shut off that layer all on the same page. The process is the same. I like to do it with different pages because it kind of separates. The drawback of the multiple page option is if you move anything from one to the other, they don't match and it can be a problem. Layers tend to work a little better so that you always are sure everything's lined up properly. But however you want to do it, it's the same basic concept. You need to create the two separate layers or two separate pages that match so that they can be sent to each of the two technologies and then combined together to create one finished product. Okay, here's another application that is common that I get a lot of questions on. How do I design a file to engrave on my rotary device 360 degrees around my object so that I've got a seamless graphic that engraves all the way around, not just a simple logo or graphic on the face of the graphic. I need to be able to engrave all the way around this. So this is a little more advanced. It does require a little bit of math, if you will, for this process to work. And I'll show you what I mean. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to find a graphic that I want to do it on in this case, and then we're going to go ahead and bring it in. So in this case, we'll go ahead and import our graphic. In this case, I got both a pixel or a graphic and a logo. I'm going to bring them both in, select them both, hit import, and I'll just drag that, click them in. Now they're not sized or scaled or anything like that. And now we want to measure our object and the diameter as well as the height of the object. And the diameter is the width of it. And then what we're going to do is the first thing you want to do is you want to drag a rectangle tool using the rectangle tool. Now we need to adjust this rectangle to match. So the cup height, which is basically the length of the cup or the engraving area, is simple. Now the width is the tricky part. So this number needs to be the width that you measured times pi, or 3.14. That's where the math comes in. And the reason that's important is because it's like we just took that cup and combined, unwrapped it into a flat page. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my graphic and I'm going to drag it out to where it's equal to that. And so I've created a page that matches, and we'll snap it right to the edge, because each of the red lines on the left and right here are the 100 or 360 degrees from each other. So this is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional object. And so that's why you take the diameter, takes that, whatever that number is, times 3.14, and that would be the width of your page in this case. Now I'll go ahead and bring in a logo. In this case, I'll fill it white. Get rid of my background or my outline. Let's drag the circle here. Just add a little bit. Hit Shift, click on C, which will center it to that graphic. Let's right click on an outline black, and let's increase our line thickness to considerably thicker, which we're going to add a border around that. Thick outlines will not cut. They will engrave with the laser. Then I'm going to take my logo, hit CE. It's behind it, so let's hit Shift, select just the logo, and hit Shift Page Up. Page Up will bring it ahead of something. Shift Page Down will put it behind. And now we're ready to go. Pending your math is correct and you measured properly, this process will work. So now I'm going to go to my laser. I'm going to turn on the rotary. And I'm going to put the original measurement that I measured in here. So the 3.46 in this case. It'll automatically take that times pi in the software, and so that it knows to rotate it the amount. And so that's why you need to do that in CorelDRAW to set it right. And so in this case, I'm going to go to my metal, powder coating. In this case, I want to make sure that the red is just set for positioning. I'm not going to actually mark the red. Place my cup into the rotary. The other very important for this to work is that the cup needs to be perfectly level. Otherwise, the rotation factor won't work. Then use your red dot pointer to target kind of the top end of the graphic. That will show as a cursor on your screen, and then you can snap your graphic to that so that I know now the top of my graphic will now be correct there. And then we'll just hit start on the rotary after we focused. And so this process, measuring the width of the object, and also because there is a taper on this, this can't be perfect. You'll notice this graphic kind of has a little bit of, it's not absolutely perfect, and you won't be able to get it perfect on a tapered glass like this, but we can get it very close, especially with a graphic like this. If it's a perfect cylinder, you can get it to where it literally comes right to itself. But so I've picked a graphic that has a little bit of adjustment, and we're not able, because we do because of the angles, and the diameter is going to vary. In this case, I will measure right in the center where the graphic will be for my diameter. So that I'm getting an average. But if it is a perfect cylinder, of course, you can engrave I've gone to the point of engraving a photograph where it was seamless, 360 degrees all the way around. Your math has to be really accurate on that one to get it just right. But the process is the same. Measure the diameter, take that diameter times pi, or 3.14, and then match your graphic to whatever that page size is. And then the height, of course, would be how big of an area you want on the cup in this case, and then go ahead, focus onto the cup, making sure it's perfectly level, and then engraving around 360 degrees around it. The hard part in this case was waiting for the cup to engrave, because it takes a lot longer to engrave around that. So sometimes not so practical because of the time it takes to run, but if you ever do want to do this process, that is how it's done. All right, another very popular one in CorelDRAW is how to create relief designs. Relief designs, or 3D relief designs, are the process of varying the shades of grayscale on your graphic, so when the laser engraves it, you get that same gradient, three-dimensional pop-out look onto the material. Well, this is actually relatively simple in CorelDRAW for basic shapes. So what I mean by basic shapes is if you have a vector graphic, if you have a logo, if you have a graphic that lots of simple dimensional shapes and sizes and stuff like that, it can easily be created this way. Now, if you're taking a photograph or a face, this process will not work. This is only going to work for your logos or your vectorized graphics. And so it's pretty simple. It uses the contour command again. So in this case, I'm going to just draw a circle, a black circle. We're going to turn on contour again. Contour is one of my favorite tools, as you can see here. But at this time, I'm going to click my contour to center. And I'm going to change my offset to 0.001, as thin as I can get it. I can round the corners. You can play with some of these different tools here if you'd like. And then I'm going to make my fill and my outline both white. So I'm starting with a black outline. I'm contouring to 0.001. We're making sure our acceleration and everything is set. And once that's done, we can then hit apply. That's going to fade from black to white with an offset of 0.001. So the nice thing about that, once it's done on contour, I can take any shape and just hit apply again. Here we go. I'll do it on a star. Hit apply. And what that does is now creates this contour. If I brought in a logo that's in color, we'll come up here, right click on black, left click on the slash, hit apply. And now we've got a gradient three-dimensional logo. Now let's place it on a black box, hit shift page down, and it's going to put it behind it. So now it would engrave all the black one. Here's a more complex graphic that maybe in this case I want to cut it out as well. In order for this process to work, the graphic needs to be combined together. So in this case, I'll select the combined graphic, also hit apply, and it'll gradient that entire graphic. And this was like 12 by 12. I did time lapse that a little bit. It took a few minutes for it to process. Then I'll select and then hit CE. And so now I've got a separate red cut line with a gradient. So there we go. The laser is actually going to engrave away the gray three-dimensional effect, and then it's going to cut out the outline. So I got that kind of radius effect. And so if I printed this to the laser, you do need to select your material and turn on relief mode. It's also called 3D mode on some laser systems. Relief mode will vary the laser power based on the shade of grayscale, and it'll engrave it so that there's more power the darker it gets and less power the lighter it is. This is going to give you that three-dimensional effect. I didn't show you the footage of it engraving. It is a little bit messy. I go over it like 3 passes to get that really deep effect. And then in this case, I cut it out. There's the Trotec logo that you saw me make. But that process is going to give you that. As long as you turn relief mode on, not all laser systems have the relief mode. If you're using like our Rayjet series, it doesn't have this feature. You need to go with the larger Speedy series and up to have this capability. Some brands out there don't have this feature as well. So make sure if you don't own a Trotec Speedy or above, or you're using a different brand, to check with your manufacturer if indeed it does this process. Now, taking this a step further, here's another very popular application using the same process I just showed you and extending it into actual patterns. This has been highly profitable because instead of engraving with massive amount of depth and taking a lot of times, it's just using that 3D effect to create textures or patterns. And so they're not just a black and white pattern, they're a gradient pattern. So they're little ovals and little dimples and fish scales and graphics so that we get that three-dimensional checkering graphic look. And so this process uses the same process we just did. And so in this case, I'm going to do just what I showed you before. I'm going to create a box. In this case, I'm going to create a checker pattern, which is commonly used on gun stocks, for example. In this case, I'm going to rotate the box 45 degrees. And I'm going to make it a diamond. And just snap it down to the center here and then create a diamond. There we go. Now we're going to go to the same contour command that we just showed you before, turning on our contour. and we're going to create a contour offset just like we did before on the larger graphics. So again, to center, offset of 0.001, making sure that our fill and our outline is set for white. And again, once that's done, all you have to do is hit apply. If you keep it in your Docker on the right all the time, you can just keep it and leave that set up, and so you can access that at any time once it's set up. Now, I have one. Now, I need to make a whole lot of these to make an array. And so an array of them, I'm going to hit Control-D, duplicate it, making sure snap is turned on. And once I've done that once, snap to the other, you can hit Control-D again, and it'll automatically duplicate that offset. Then I'm going to group that line. We'll hit Control-D again, grab that, and I'm going to use the snap to snap that row into the next line. Now we're going to select both lines, and we're going to then snap that down. And once that's done, we hit Control-D again, and it'll duplicate that offset. And we're going to do that as many times as necessary to build an entire array. This array can be as big as you want. I will typically go as much large, but this is going to really slow down your computer. Once you're done, I go to bitmaps, and we're going to convert this to a bitmap. And you'll know really quick why I do this, because your computer will not be able to handle that many lines. Once I've got a good size array done, convert it to a bitmap, then I can take my shape, right click on that shape and click on frame type and create an empty power clip. Then I've got a much larger array that I created earlier. And then I can just grab that bitmap now and just drop it into my array or my outline. And so power clip will automatically outline it. And then I can send that to the laser to engrave into a gun stock in this case. Once the array is done, you can just right click it again, hit extract, move it into a different spot, and then send that to the laser to engrave. And you've got that three-dimensional diamond checker pattern into it. Here's a little more complex looking graphic, but it's the same process. As long as the image is combined together and converted into a power clip, I've already converted it to a power clip. So I combined it, then I made it a power clip container, and I'll drop the large array into that. And so this is a full-size rifle stock with a little more decor on it. And that's the only difference in this case. All the open areas were combined together and converted to a power clip. Then I'll select that, and I'll show you how all the way through to the lasers in this case. So we'll go to Properties, turn on the type of material in this case. I've got a nice walnut wood. You want to make sure relief mode is turned on. And I like to personally run these at 1,000 DPI. 500 will work, but I get a nice crisp look on 1,000. Takes a little more time, but it looks really good. All right, we're going to send that to the laser. I already have this set into a template outline. And I used the same Bezier tool to trace around this stock when I first started, as I showed you before. And then we'll hit start. In this case, there's a little bit of curvature on it, so I focused right in between the high point and the low point. This type of application is pretty forgiving. So I'm using a standard 2-inch lens here. And we're engraving that three-dimensional checker grip pattern onto a rifle stock. Very popular application, extremely profitable application too. And then our final process, of course, pull it out of the laser, stick just a little bit of moisture underneath, scrub it down, and then dab it off really quick. And then I'll usually hit it with just some gun oil to kind of seal the pores down inside, and we're done. So that is the entire process of designing the checkering diamond, duplicating it into a row, using your snap command and your duplication features, and then combining a big array of them into a bitmap so that becomes manageable for your computer, and then using that bitmap to drop into any contoured outline. Whether that contour outline is combined together or not, like this one, the process is the same. And once you've done that and created an array, of course, I've provided you with my array that I did here in our files. And so if you want to use mine and drop it into a contour, you're welcome to use mine or create your own. Here's a few other examples that I've done with it. You know, I've done duck calls, I've done sword handles. I've even put a grip pattern around a handle of a baseball bat, or a sword handle, a knife blade, or a knife handle. So a very, very neat effect. It produces a very I would say it's got a high perceived value look too. I did a fish scale one, which is a little bit different there. You can kind of see, I even took the Trotec T logo and duplicated it and then did a contouring and then power clip that in. So you can actually duplicate a logo portion into an outline to create a grip, which is now branded. So great process, fun to do, and a little more advanced, but definitely got a lot of cool pull capabilities to do that. And a lot of these grip patterns are available, of course, in the file I gave you. I don't think I did all of them, just some of the two or three of the most common ones that I use. All right, we're almost done here, and then we're going to move forward. We'll have Craig Mertens from Digital Art Solutions. He's going to show you his software as well, to how it's they make Digital Art Solutions makes an add-on software for creating, making some of these processes a little more streamlined. But we're going to cover this last one that I have here. This is a great little feature that I've been using a lot lately, just to simulate. Simulation, sometimes I don't want to stick it in the laser and cut it. Well, how do you get away with that? And so I'm going to show you how to take a clip art or a graphic and completely basically make it look almost real without actually sending it to your laser. This is great if you want to, you know, sell a file on Etsy, or if you want to create a really good, clean looking graphic that is going to be posted on your website for sale. Because you're not dealing with lighting issues or photography issues. And so I will do this sometimes to kind of see how it's going to look or prove a concept before I actually process it into a material. And so it is a neat little process. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import some graphics. I'm going to import some real photographs of some wood and a clip art. So here's a piece of cherry wood, just a skin that I brought in, actual real photo of cherry wood. There's my graphic, which is a pixelated, or not a pixelated, a vectorized graphic that's been combined together. So for this work, the image needs to be combined. I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to immediately duplicate my original graphic. Now, what I need to do is convert it to an outline. Let's right-click on black, left-click on the fill, so I have a very thin, just a black outline. Making sure this is combined. If it's not combined together, select everything and then combine it. If it won't let you combine, you may need to break it apart or ungroup it first. Then, like before, I'm going to create an empty power clip frame. And now I'm going to just drag my wood, and this is a real photo of wood, into it. It needs to be large enough to fit. Drag it into my graphic, and it's going to fill that area up, just like we did with the checkering patterns. Now that kind of sort of looks realistic, but not entirely. So I'm gonna take the black one. I'm gonna hit Shift C and E, so it's right behind it. Then I'm gonna select the top, and I'm gonna just use my arrow keys and kind of cursor it up a little bit and to the left. This is gonna create a drop shadow. So basically, I'm just taking and moving the black behind it, and it's now looking a lot more realistic. One more little step that I'm gonna do. Let's go ahead and take this and group it together. And let's add a shadow. And the shadow is great because you can do drop shadows. You can have it to where it looks like it's cast on a wall behind it. You can have it to where it looks like it's cast on the floor by just clicking and then dragging your shadow. And as you pull it in one direction or the other, you can kind of identify which direction that shadow is going to go. You can also grab the little center cursor bar in the middle of the shadow and adjust how much or how little the shadow is. And in this case, let's go ahead and put it on a different piece of wood so it looks like it's sitting on a table. Shift page up so it's behind it. And now we have our simulation, and that's it. And so now we'll just take this. In this case, I will hit export. And I want to export it out as a JPEG in this case, just a JPEG graphic, so that I wanted to put it, say, on a website, for example. Export it to a JPEG. And now it's basically creating a finished result graphic. And there's the real cut that I actually cut on the laser. And here's my simulation. As you can see, the simulation looks much better, actually. They both have the similar shadows. They have the same drop shadow effect, but the simulation doesn't have any glare or lighting issues. The wood is exactly the look that I want because the photo of the wood was taken at different angles and then given that effect. And so this is a great method to create a drop shadow, realistic looking effect using the contour or using the power clip command with the inside of a combined graphic, and then creating a black background and then offsetting it, and then using the shadow feature to create a realistic looking simulation. All right, well, that was my last slide here. A couple more here before we move on with Craig. If you haven't kept up with our material supplies, we have a nice little promotion going on for the month of February, $25 off $100. And the voucher code is February-promo-2021, and you can use it unlimited. Offer applies only in the United States through the month of February. If you missed last month's third Thursday training seminar, here's a QR code for that. It was on outdoor recreation. That's the other one where I did some of the gun checkering and stuff like that, which I kind of extended into this month as one on that because it's also a Corel course technique. But this one really went through all the different processes for outdoor recreation. It will be online, public. You can scan this QR code now from last month if you want to go back and watch the one from last month. All right, thank you so much. We're now going to go into our Q&A. First thing I'm going to do here is we're going to go in with, we're going to meet up with Craig here, and we're going to, he's going to give us a little run through of his software on the Corel side, and then we're going to meet up with Roger, and then we'll answer all of your questions.
Thanks, David. Well done. While you were doing that, I was setting up a document of many of the things that you guys showed that you showed in your demonstration, and some of the automations that we would do in Corel to do that. And it was really fun seeing the traditional methods and then seeing kind of what we've done to kind of automate that. What you guys see on the screen right here, this is a program called Smart Designer. Smart Designer has been in our industry for about 25 years and adds about 160 functionalities to Corel seamlessly. This is the Smart Designer Docker, and actually David has that on his computer. He's always asking me questions. Hey, how do you do that? So I have a secondary motive. I'm training David right now, all the neat things that his software can do. So one of the things that you guys run into pretty frequently in dealing with customer supplied artwork is you'll get files from clients that are not really very well suited to the lasering, and you have to recolor them. And so we have a whole suite of functionality that will just automatically recolor files. And so if you had this file right here and you just wanted to convert it to black and white, it will do that automatically. There's color tolerances, so you can tell it, hey, more of these lighter shades need to be white, more of these lighter shades need to be dark. If I wanted to convert that over to grayscale, we can do that as well, and it'll recolor the actual vectors. This is what we call a design template. We have tens of thousands of design templates. So if you wanted to actually edit that file and you wanted to go in and do a name drop, even with that multi-layered text effect, you can just go into our template editing feature and quite easily just go in here and localize this. And what's neat about this is you can set up your plaques and your trophies like that. So instead of having to change all the words in here to baseball, I can just type in baseball, be super lazy about my case because I'm going to just hit T and change it to tile case, convert it to black and white, and laser it. One of the things that people do all the time in lasering, and David kind of alluded to this, is what we'd call circle text. We have a dedicated feature for that. So you would put in your copy, you'd pick your options. Do you want to inline or an outline? Do you want to combine? Do you want to make this part dark? Hit apply, and it's going to set that up. And this is a live template, so I can go back and edit it like any other template. One of the things we're doing is we're doing some processing on this bottom part here so that we don't get strange locations of the characters. A lot of times when you do that mirror effect like David was showing you, the bottom part has to be adjusted, and we do that automatically. When you're doing things like contouring, we have a dedicated contouring feature. So you would go down to our contouring function, and you'd go down to printing and cutting. You would click on the contouring function. You'd pick your color for your laser right here. If you want to offset it, if you want to round the corners, if you wanted to do a boundary or a border, all the kind of parameters, if you want to put it on a separate layer for print and cut, you would just hit apply, and it's automatically going to set the contour line up. And you don't have to go in and pull it, extract the contour or break it apart. It's done automatically. And so it's pretty handy for like reversing clip art out if you wanted to put a color behind there and push it to the back. And reverse out the colors for clip art. Pretty handy for that. Something that we're super famous for is our virtual sampling feature. We have hundreds of stock products that are built into our proposals function, but you can drag and drop any product you want into proposals. If you want to create a little mock-up, it's just a matter of clicking on the product. It'll generate the mock-up. You have a very powerful proposals functions. You can set up your own forms. The software will dynamically create the forms, add the drop shadow effects to the product blanks, kind of like what David was doing there. And you end up with something like this. This is just a simple form that's built into the software, but you can add your own forms. Ganging things up, that's something that people are constantly doing in Corel. So that's all automated as well. So we can automatically size to preset products because we have a whole database of products. So if you want to size to a product, you can go to the database. But just to gang that up, you'd set up your margins, you'd pick your options, you'd hit apply. It's automatically going to set it up for your sheet. You can put it 0, 0 in the corner. If you want arcing and enveloping, that's all automated. And so we would go into our arcing and enveloping functionality under effects, and we would just go down here and say live effects, pick the style of our arc. In the case of kind of what David was talking about was doing, like the Twill effect, that's a feature. What I would do is I'd go into outline effects in Smart Designer. I just cruise over here, pick my layout. Do I want to knock the color through, or do I want it to float on top? It's kind of up to me. Hit apply. It's going to set up all the layers for my applique or for my text for me. I just did a quick little bevel effect. I thought of this too, David, for your 3D. We could add our bevel effect and our highlight effect here. I think that would laser out pretty cool. Borders, that's all automatic. If I want to do a border, have my design, pick my border, it's going to set that up for me automatically. I don't have to go and do any kind of layout. It'll just automatically frame it. You kind of get the idea. I took that idea with your etching there, and using our quick fills function, we can just apply a fill to that, recolor it down to black and white, and you're set up. And on the home stretch, so barcoding, we have a very powerful barcoding capability in the software, all the common barcodes. So it'll do that automatically. It'll even vector the barcode too if you want it to be vector. Extracting a black and white channel out of a color image for laser etching, pretty slick little feature. We have a functionality for creating halftone effects from photos. This is our production software. I didn't really get into this, but if you wanted to contour that, we have a functionality in our production software called Stone Cut. You would just click on the contour, set in your parameters, and then you would just apply your parameters. I did a slight inside bleed on that, so it's slightly inside the graphic versus being around the border. So these are the kinds of things that we do. Getting this file set up for production in our system, that's a one-click deal. I would just go to auto weld, and I would just simply go to auto weld and use the auto weld function to set that file up, and then I would recolor it down to black and white. So I'd get rid of the fill, give it an outline, and you're set up there. And last but not least, we're famous for our vectorization. Corel has pretty decent vectorization, but when you get into copy and things like that, here's your original file, and here's the Corel trace. You're going to get some kind of jagged edges and some lumps. When we trace it, we can trace it to black and white in our Stone Cut software, and it's going to smooth and align all the text for you. And so I traced it to color, and then I also traced it to black and white, did automatic conversion. So that's it. That's the whirlwind. So this is what we do for a living. We've for over 25 years, actually our business has been around for 32 years. We've partnered with Corel Corporation and developed all of these add-ons. And Roger and I have known each other for about 17 or 18 years. They create this great engine, and they give us the keys to the car, and they say, hey, let's turn this into an industry-specific software for laser engraving, print and cut, screen printing, direct-to-garment, sublimation, embroidery. That's what we do. We just go in and automate all these things, and we have these massive collections of artwork. So with that being said, we are doing a webcast on March 1st on our Graphics Academy. If you go to digitalartsolutions.com and click on Graphics Academy, you guys can register. A lot of you guys are already registered. We are going to send out an email to you guys so you guys can download some really amazing sample files. So those of you that signed up for the webcast, will send out a little blurb. And I'm just going to sit back and shut my mouth, and then you guys can fire off questions, and Roger and David and I are going to do our very best to answer them.
All right. Well, thank you, Craig. That is definitely an advantage, and that's why I wanted to have you come in at the end there and kind of show how you've you've taken a lot of these processes that I showed with just basic CorelDRAW. So if you just have basic CorelDRAW, some of the processes that I just showed can be tedious. You can have multiple steps where, the add-on software like Digital Art Solutions has created has really streamlined a lot of those processes to work well with peripheral devices like lasers. And that's why I kind of wanted to bring Craig and Digital Art Solutions on with me today to kind of showcase that. And so now let's go ahead and move forward with our question and answer section. We will basically, as the questions were asked, we'll go through those, and hopefully we don't have too many today. Otherwise, we'll have to cap it a little bit. But we'll do our best to answer the type of questions as they came in. So if we can go ahead and have the questions posted here on the screen, we'll get into that. All right, let's get going here. Lazy Dave, last time you showed how to get the Trotec color palette into CorelDRAW, I saw you also had a palette with 16 different grayscales. How do we get there how do we get that one for relief engraving? Thanks. And I apologize for that. I had a lot of people come in afterwards and say your color palette was different, and you are right. My color palette I had customized it on my screen so that it did have the grayscales. If you want, we can post that somewhere, or I can post it with this stream of this one. I'll post the version with the 16 grayscales. The other option is just turn on the standard grayscale 16 or your standard grayscale feature that is in CorelDRAW. Any grayscale is going to work with the laser. I just literally took an existing grayscale palette that I pulled from another one, and then you can just drag them over from one color palette onto the Trotec color palette, and then you can make your own quick and easy that way. But if you want the one, we can include it with this presentation. Once it's posted on our YouTube channel, we'll include a download link for that color palette.
Yeah, Dave was kind enough to give us the Trotec palette, so we incorporated that into Smart Designer, our color management feature, so you could just go to presets and say Trotec, and boom, that palette will just pop back up.
Perfect.
So thanks for doing that for me. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Happy to. The more we can have it out there and the easier we make it for customers, the better. All right, next question. After engraving cutting, are you wiping with a damp cloth or something special solution to get rid of the burn marks? That is a great question. It really depends on the material you're using with. In most cases, yes, just a standard terry cloth, or I use like a microfiber type cloth and wipe over the surface. The only way that's going to work, though, is if your material is finished. And so like the wood that you saw me do that with, the wood has been finished with a clear coat. The clear coating is been put on the wood before it was engraved, and then it will wipe right off. If that wood does not have a clear coat, then that process won't work. On plastics and other materials, yes, just a simple cloth. If you do get some staining and residue, you can use any type of cleaner based on what material you're using with, or you're using it with too. So you got to be careful too. Like, for example, not use alcohol after you've engraved acrylic, for example, because it'll crack acrylic. So you want to use like the LA Awesome cleaner, works really well. Any other types of cleaners more suited for the materials if it's got a stained or a stubborn one, or stubborn type staining that comes from it. But in most cases, I just use just a semi-damp cloth to wipe the surface after I've done cutting and engraving. What does front minus back actually mean? That's a great question. That means the different layers, basically, which one is behind the other one. So in CorelDRAW, each object or element that you process will actually be behind of another. So front minus back, it will depend. Basically, I want to remove the front layer from the back layer, basically. Or it's not layers, if you will, it's the object behind the other. So if you were to drag one layer in front of the other, the reason it's behind something, that's the front to back, and that's what it's referring to in that case.
What I would suggest doing on that, draw two squares, make them different colors, overlap them at the corners, and select both of them, go them on the property bar, and then you can just shuttle through the different icons for the welding, trimming, front minus back, simplify. I think, David, you showed the simplify function in there. That's one of my very favorite functions in Corel because it takes complex images and punches all the layers through. So I would always advocate just two boxes, intersect them at the corner, and play with those features so you can see exactly what they're doing. And then turn on your hints under help. And as you select those tools, it'll give you kind of the lowdown on what that tool is doing.
Great plan. Yeah, I run into that a lot because I mean it depends on how your object is actually designed too. So I mean, if you did one before the other, you instead of doing front minus back, it might need to be back minus front, depending on which direction or which one you're going to done. We have Roger here. I was going to say let's go ahead and add Roger to this, and he may have some feedback on some of these different tools as well. Roger Wambolt is the senior product trainer for CorelDRAW. Welcome, and thank you for joining me, Roger.
Thank you.
So we were just kind of discussing some of these different features in CorelDRAW and answering some of these questions. And so feel free if you have any questions, and you may be able to chime in on this one. Some customers asking, what does the front minus back actually mean?
Well, it's basically looking at the stacking order is what it's referred to.
Kind of the way we
you draw a rectangle on the page. You then draw an ellipse. Your ellipse is going to be above that in the object manager, or the object docker rather. And so you're removing the back portion from the front, or sorry, you're removing the front portion from the back object is what you're doing.
Yep. Okay. Good. And so that's from the mouth of the guy that knows it the best. So we were right. Craig and I were definitely right. All right, next question, please. Can you control the order of the cut? Probably a good one for you, Roger. The order of the cut.
Yeah, it's typically based on the last object selected.
Yeah, that's a good point. And during, when the pandemic hit, we had a client that was cutting face shields, and they were cutting them by the hundreds. And one of the things that it was a very complex template. So if you have an object with multiple objects in Corel and you hit your tab key, right, Roger,
yes.
You can shuttle through the different objects, and you can also see what's going on in the object manager. So the production software I was showing you guys, the StoneCut 3+ software, will auto sort that. So it will take your entire graphics file. You'll set a cutting or sorting direction, and it'll resort all the objects. And then you can just drag and drop it back into Corel and output. And we had a client when he was cutting those face shields, he cut his cut time on his face shields down by 50% just by sorting the cutting orders. So that's a neat little trick in our StoneCut software. So I thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, and Trotec also has an add-on to our job control called Job Control Cut. So it can be actually ordered after it's been sent to the laser as well. It is an add-on to the job control software. If you are interested in that, we can get you some more information on that. So this way, if the file's already been sent and it's not actually processing in the order that you want, you don't have to go back into your software and manually order it. You can order it afterwards as well. Most of our software too will automatically do inside cuts before it does outside. It don't necessarily cut it in the order it was drawn. It does sequence and know that inside cuts need to be cut before outside cuts. But some laser brands don't do that. And sometimes you do want to control exactly which product cuts before another cut. And that's where the ordering right out of CorelDRAW is beneficial. Okay, you mentioned that it has to be vector. What if it isn't? That's a great question. When it comes to a lot of the graphics that I covered today, I mentioned that it has to be vector formats. Vector format, there's really two main types of graphics out there. There's pixelated imagery, which is your GIF, your JPEG, your TIFF, your bitmap type graphics. Those are pixelated graphics taken from digital cameras and stuff like that, or scanned images. And then there's vector graphic. Vector graphics are like text. They don't have a resolution. They can be scaled indefinitely. And they don't have an actual mean. In order to draw, the image has to be vector. If it is not, then you can run trace programs to convert a pixelated image into a vector. And that's, we didn't cover a lot of the trace command today. Craig did show you just a second ago that they offer an add-on to CorelDRAW that enhances the existing CorelDRAW trace. But if it is not vector traced, some of the tools that I covered today will not work. So you can't weld things together because they're pixelated. Now you can use like the photo editing softwares in CorelDRAW's Photo Paint to modify and work with pixelized imagery. But that's only going to be for engraving. If you want to cut with the laser or create outlines or vector cut or any of that type of stuff, that's why the graphic has to be it cannot be a pixelated graphic. It has to be a vector graphic.
Yeah, go ahead, Raj.
Sorry, one more thing you can do with that, and I can show you on screen if you'd like. But if you do have a raster image, simply use power trace to convert that to vector. When you're doing the power trace, drop it down to 2 or 3 colors.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, you want to keep your original image intact. Once the trace is completed, you can delete the vector or create the boundary, then delete your vector object, and you'll be left with the raster image with the cut line around it.
Yeah.
One
way I would.
Another cool thing you can do, the image adjustment lab in Corel, it's a little bit hidden in the 2020, but if you go to the, I think it's under object, where'd we put it here? Is it under effects now, adjust, and image adjustment lab? If you select a bitmap, you can go in there and adjust the contrast and the brightness to create a more of a clear distinction between the dark parts of the graphic and the light parts, so that you can either use the change the color mode to black and white, or you can utilize the technique that Roger just explained. And I found that super duper handy. That's one of my favorite CorelDRAW features.
And fairly quick. And your scenario with the toolbox that you were showing, that's the process. Rather than using the Bezier, I would probably take that photograph or that scanned image of the wrench or the pliers, and I would trace that. And
I found that it's just not accurate enough.
Okay.
In this case, I mean, mine was perfectly clean, but when you scan an image like that, typically I actually outlined and removed the background in photo editing software so that it looked good for my presentation. But in a traditional scan, it will never look that clean. And so a trace it's not going to be accurate enough, unfortunately, for the laser precision.
Yeah, and just 2 cents, the contour function, that's one of the reasons the StoneCut software is so popular, because of the contour function. Uses vectorization, but it's got algorithms to eliminate borders and also sets up your print and cut with print and cut marks too, by the way.
Oh, good.
But yeah, so just FYI on that one. And it's becoming more popular, like you said, David. Print and cut is huge, and a laser is a great way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no better way to do it, in my opinion, either, for the accuracy.
Exactly.
All right, next question. We have 3/4 inch basswood using laser and cutting on both sides with a flip. So basically, we're going to cut inch basswood and use a laser with cutting both sides with a flip. So I guess I'm trying to understand what you mean by this. So you want to cut on both sides. I mean, typically I won't, once something's cut, trying to flip it or move it is very difficult, because in order to flip something over and cut, say, on the other side, for example,
repositioning.
Repositioning is just, you're never going to get it just right. There's just no way. Even if you have a template and it's placed perfectly in there, just angle of laser beam and trying to cut, say, halfway through on one side and then flip it over and cut the other halfway through, you're just never going to line it up. You're always better off cutting from one side if possible. Or, in that case, if I'm trying to cut through this thickness, I probably, if I wouldn't do it, you're just never going to get it just right. So trying to flip it and trying to accurately position the laser to hit exactly on both sides, mirrored from one side to the other, it's just not going to happen. So I would avoid it, or get a material that can be cut of that thickness, or a higher wattage that can get through that thickness from the front side.
What about a different lens?
It still won't help.
No. Okay.
The main issue in this case is it's not the lens; it's the fact that we're dealing with divergence issues through a thickness of a piece of materials or angle. It's like a magnifying glass in the sun, and so you're trying to flip it over and then accurately hit from both directions. It's just not going to happen. You're going to drive yourself crazy trying to figure it out. Long ago, I just realized it's futile and always cut from the one side.
Could you use a stock that was half the thickness and glue them together?
Yes, that's a great way to do it. So in that case, if I'd want to do 3 inches thick of material, cut a top layer of a hardwood and then cut a softer wood and then adhere them together so it looks like the real wood, but then you're using a softer compound on the background so that you are getting that effect. And so, that's a great way to do it, is stack it. But if you're going really thick and you need to cut through that type of thickness, a laser may not be your best solution for that. Wouldn't that work? The tumbler's angled smaller at the bottom. I think they're referencing to the 360 degrees. I did kind of cover that a little bit towards the end. Engraving 360 degrees around something is, if you do have the taper of a tumbler, I am averaging my diameter. And then, as you noticed, my graphic was more pixelate or it had a design on it to where you're not going to see it. And if you do need an actual graphic that is solid to go 360 degrees around an object like that, then no, it's not going to be perfect in this case. A cylinder will work. If you average it and you have a graphic like I showed you in my design, you can get away with it. But it is going to be impossible to get into absolute perfect flush point-to-point 360-degree engraving on an angled tumbler unless you kind of have a graphic like I showed you. So that is a good question, though.
Yeah, one thing, just real quick, if it's linear though, Roger, what do you think about using the perspective tool if it's a linear graphic, not a wrap, but a linear graphic, to use the perspective tool to distort the image?
You can certainly do that. Yeah, use the linear or use the perspective tool. Now, as of 2019, you have perspective for bitmaps as well.
Right.
So, but yeah, you could certainly try that.
Yeah, the issue with that is the rotation factor of the rotary is rotating consistently. It doesn't compensate. So.
No.
Yeah, and so from a hardware standpoint, even if the graphic has been modified, it still may not line up. So
when are you releasing your 3D driver then, David?
The 3D driver? Yeah. I'll get back to you on that.
All right.
Rotary engraving a circle shape generally makes and resulting in it being oblong. Is there a formula to create ellipse on a circle? It needs to be in CorelDRAW, appears to be circle and engrave. If you're engraving, you shouldn't see an ellipse unless your diameter is set incorrectly, or if you have a lot of taper on your graphic. The rotary, if you put the right diameter in when you're using your rotary, you'll get a perfect circle every time. Unless you've got a lot of taper on your glass or your graphic or your tumbler, for example. But in most cases, you won't see that. If you're getting an ellipse when you engrave on on your rotary, most likely that means you're not putting in the correct diameter. So it's not rotating that product correctly, and that's giving you the ellipse. So there's nothing you need to do in CorelDRAW. You just need to make sure you measure your diameter, where you're going to engrave or where that circle is correctly, and it should rotate it properly to give you a perfect circle.
There's a spreadsheet floating around that I've seen in the past. I'm on a sublimation Facebook page as well, and they're talking about sublimating on tapered glasses and tumblers and this sort of thing. And there is an Excel sheet that's floating around called taperglass.xls, and it basically allows you to put in the formula, the height of your glass, top diameter, bottom diameter, and then it'll give you the dimensions on how to distort your vector artwork. So you end up with minimizing that issue, but so that's something you can look into as well.
Yeah, we're gonna automate that. We actually are gonna automate that function in Corel because it's just all math.
Yes,
and we're gonna build a UI for automating basically compensations for tumblers.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you when, but it's on the project board right now.
Well, you guys both just answered the next question, actually. You know, how do you account for the taper and the image and overlapping taper of the cup? And so, and that is exactly right. Roger and Craig basically answered that question. It's just a lot of math right now. You can compensate it design-wise so that you can compensate for a taper and you can get it around. But right now, it's not real practical unless you're doing one graphic that's going to be repeated hundreds or thousands of times where it's profitable to spend the time to do that. In most cases, for one-up, the amount of time it takes to generate or modify that graphic is just not worth it. So until there are automated methods of doing this, I typically tell people, you know, stay away from it unless it's got a high enough volume. You can really tinker with it and do the right math and stuff like that until. But it is definitely a problem out there. And Craig mentioning that your software may eventually do that, maybe something to stay tuned on and keep an eye out for if this is something that you deal with as a problem.
One piece of advice I would give too is I always like to tell when I do the business side of my training is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And you have to design things that are production friendly that will reduce the amount of spoilage you have. Like, so trying to do that taper thing, you know, you are going to increase your spoilage, but there's certain things you can do in the designs. When we do our class on the first, I'll show you some tips and tricks on things you can do on the design side to get really close to what you want, but make a file that's more production friendly with a lower spoilage rate.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't 2 hours to engrave one cup. It's just not worth it. All right, next question. How do you calculate the precise size of the cup itself around the template? We like to create a template for different sizes of tumbler. Good question. I kind of the same method that I showed you earlier. I wouldn't use a scanner. I just use a simple pair of calipers, and I would measure the width of the cup at the top, width of the cup at the bottom, and then the height of the cup. And then you can draw that right into your CorelDRAW so that you can get a two-dimensional representation of what it's going to look like. If you're just doing something like a logo on it, you don't want to engrave more than about 1/3 of the front of that, so that you don't have to rotate the glass to see your graphic. But it is a good way to represent a product is by but the way that I will do it is I will draw it. I will measure the top. I will measure the bottom, and then I will draw kind of in between, so you have that taper effect of a cup on the screen that matches it as though you were looking at it from a straight two-dimensional plane. That, you know, and then of course, if you're doing 3D, that's 360 degrees, it's a little different, but that's typically how I will do that, so that we get that that effect, that we can kind of see what it looks like on the front. And Craig showed you that software earlier. His software will actually overlay your graphic onto it to show you what it's going to look like before it actually runs. So
Zumi, yeah, Zumi has our software, and shout out to Belize. And hey, Zumi, how you doing? What's going on? Your weather's better than ours, I bet you. Anything?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, Belize, yeah, definitely a little better than even Arizona. All right, next question. Are the grit pattern files available to download to test? The file that I created and offered online, I think I have 3 or 4 of the grit patterns that I showcased today. And then, of course, you can use that as an example to make more. I didn't include all of them because the files are rather large. So I do an array of, I think I provided 4 of them, some of the more popular ones. But yes, most of the ones that I showcased are available on there. And then of course, with the skill sets you just learned, you can then use that as a design to create more.
Hey, Roger, did you notice how David just low-keyed engraving that gun stock? We're just going to throw a gun stock in here. Yeah, we're going to laser.
Exactly.
I've been doing this 21 years. It's easy.
Yeah. Just this past week, we've outlawed assault rifles here in the city, or actually in the country.
Well, yeah, assault rifles. I guess that makes sense. We tend to do it more for shotguns.
Sorry, automatic rifles.
Automatic.
You're in Canada, right? Yeah. I heard that on the news.
Yeah.
All right. Think you could save all the files as. Think you could save all the files as PDFs. That way, they can import them into other versions of CorelDRAW. Thank you. Oh, I see what they're saying. Yeah, the versions, my downloads go back to X7, I believe, or 7 versus X7 or 17. I could go back and re-upload them as PDF so that you can import them into earlier versions. The reasons I don't go lower than 17 is you start to get losses of data if you revert back further than that from version 22. So
yeah, I always like to mention, for sometimes folks get kind of embedded in their older versions. Corel Corporation, I believe the company policy is you guys do support for the current version and 2 versions back. Is that correct?
Well, that's what it was traditionally. We've changed that and basically opened it up. So if a customer does have X3 or X3, for example, and they're looking for support, they'll get support.
Yeah. So the thing I always like to mention is, Microsoft is really busy trying to keep people out of your computer, and Microsoft service packs really give software a hard time, and Corel's not immune for that. I always recommend this is and I don't have any skin in this game. Get on the subscription. You always have the latest software, no tech drama. We see all the tech drama that we see in our organization is always folks running older versions. Yeah. But that being said, sometimes you have legacy software and drivers, and you can't do that. But I love Corel 2020. I will attest my affection for Corel 2020. It's the best version Corel has ever done. It's super stable. It is crazy fast. Maybe 2021, I'll keep my... I guess there's this new thing going to come out at some point. Roger can't talk about it. Don't even ask him. But you guys are going to have a high bar to get past 2020. It's a marvelous piece of software.
The other thing with dealing with older versions is your file formats.
Yeah.
So if a customer sends you a file, you have X8, for example. They send you a 2017 file. Well, you're out of the water. You're going to have them save it down for you. So staying current gives you the latest filters.
Yeah.
And just another word to the wise, just real quick, the file previews in 2020 are different. There's a different preview extension, and they just look gorgeous in Windows 10. All the file previews are beautiful. Nice, big, high-res previews. You can zoom in on them real tight. And that is one of the neat things on 2020.
Yeah.
So
definitely worth it too. And I do know some people that are kind of stuck and they really like a version. That doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't upgrade your version. If you have a newer version and an older, you can still work in your older versions, but the newer version is going to give you the ability to download and open, revert back to your version. You're going to be able to open other people's software, their formats, the import filters. So definitely worth it to upgrade. The subscription is the way to go. That's what I do, especially if you're in this game. This way you're always up to date. Yeah.
We do that too. We exclusively the subscription.
Yep. Where did you get these gun stock wood patterns on wood? And wood.
And wood.
Well,
and the wood.
I mean, I went to Boyd's Grips and actually bought the gun stock. I mean, you can go to most of the manufacturers that make the gun stocks and just buy the stocks. I mean, they're just walnut stocks. You know, this was just for a little 12 gauge shotgun, you know, for shoot and skeet type stuff. But, you know, the grip patterns, that's what I just showed you how to make. That's where I get the grip patterns. I create them. And that's what you want to do. You can use some of my base ones, and now you can have the skill set by watching the video I just showed you to create more.
I'm going to automate that. That's a good one, because that's my favorite part of your class is when you do that. And I think I'm going to automate those grip patterns into a power clip pattern. Wouldn't that be cool, Roger?
I think it would be, yes.
Yeah. That'd be
I'd
great.
go over that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because you know the main process with that too is when I'm doing a large array, because there's 500 or 600 lines per contour, and then that contour is duplicated 1,000 times, it really slows my computer down. By the time I've got an array half a page, I have to go to lunch to let it finish rendering. I mean, that's why I convert it to a bitmap and then power clip after that, because it cannot handle. You'd have to have a supercomputer to handle that much data.
There's a setting, Roger. There's a setting on the refresh setting that actually remedies that.
I'm just looking for it now, where you can turn on GPU.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We have to do that when we output rhinestone patterns. Some of these rhinestone patterns are 2,000 dots.
Yeah, when you get so many pixels, it just it kills your memory on your computer.
And Corel 2020 is really much faster on rendering those. You only see it with vector graphics, right? So, but it's much faster. In fact, when 2020 came out, it was the first thing I looked at. I was like, hey, is the refresh faster on these complex vectors? And it was literally instantaneous if you change that setting.
No, there's no doubt it's better. But when I get really large, I mean, and I've got one hell of a computer here, it's still not enough.
Yeah, I hear
you. So it's tools, options, global. And if you highlight general, the option is called use GPU for acceleration upsampling.
Okay. All right. How many times would you run relief patterns? I think they're talking about how many engraving processes. As you saw in the sample one that I did, it's just one pass. You can go multiple passes, I guess, but I will typically just run it once. You do want enough it depends on the laser power. If you've got a very low wattage, you may run it twice rather than running it very slow. When you run 3D images like that, very, very slow, it can build up too much heat. And so you don't want the heat to build up into your material. It can scorch it. It can stain it more. And so if you got a low wattage, you may run it with 2 passes. In that case where you saw the gun that I ran today, I did run that in 1 pass, but I was running a 120 watt laser. So if you're running a 30 watt or 40 watt, you may go a little faster and then hit 2 passes. It's going to give you a cleaner finished result versus trying to run very, very slow, which is going to build up more heat. Your time is going to be the same, but it really depends on the wattage that you're running.
Yeah. Also, one other thing, I just found it. If you go to CorelDRAW, if you go to Tools, you got to go to Tools and CorelDRAW and click on Display. There's a checkbox that says Interruptible Refresh. If you switch to manual refresh, then it doesn't bog you down every time you move an image. And so, but you have to hit Control W to refresh it. So if you're like trying to resize a thing that's got a 10,000 vector dots in it, just switch it to manual and then do a Control W to refresh it manually, and then you won't get that I guess it's like a delay. Is the best way to, yeah.
Yeah, good to know. Can we get the different array patterns you showed, herringbone?
Popular topic.
Yeah, apparently a popular topic. I mean, the goal is to teach you how to do it so you can do it yourself. That was kind of the whole point of that process. Like I said, I did apply and offer you 4 of them in the download, but the goal is to teach you exactly how to do it and create it yourself. Contact us if you do want a few more, but the goal was so that to teach you exactly how to make your own, and this way you're only limited to your own imagination.
Teach them how to fish.
Yeah, teach. Yeah, don't give them the fish pattern. Teach them how to make the fish pattern.
All right. So Jenny, I have a confession. So that speed demo, that is the outline for the class on March 1st. That is the hour and 20-minute class. So you saw the 5-minute version.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. This is one for you, Craig. How much is this your software add-on cost?
So the software, there's 2 programs you saw here. The software that's called Smart Designer is part of our Graphics Plus membership program. So we're a subscription just like Corel is. And so there's 2 levels of the membership. Level 1 is $69 a month. It includes the Smart Designer software. It also includes a supplementary program called Rhinestone Designer, which has it's a very powerful program for doing vector graphics, primarily for like spirit wear, doing rhinestone multi-decoration, anything to do with vinyl. But the neat thing about the membership, it includes technical support. It includes our training. We do classes 2 to 3 times a week. You have access to our members area. You get account management, so you can talk to a live human if you have a problem. Roger knows this. People call us for Corel Tech support. And so if we get a really difficult Corel thing, Roger's nice enough to help me out. I really appreciate you've been doing that. And you notice I really don't try to abuse that privilege, but it's really quite a joy when we get a really tricky deal. And we've worked on some doozies over the years. Mm-hmm. So there's another membership, which is a standard membership, where we have a new graphics collection that we do every month. And one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of the laser folks, they have other processes. A lot of them are doing sublimation and UV. And the one with the graphics is actually more popular. You also saw the StoneCut 3 Plus software, and there's 2 flavors to that. There's the vectorization and vector editing only version called Smart Vector Pro, which is $200, and then there's the full StoneCut 3 Plus software, which will drive all your popular vinyl cutters, routers, 3D engravers, all that kind of stuff. And that version is $499. But I will make a deal. Anyone that's interested in the 3 Plus, use the promo code Trotec 2021, and I'm gonna give you guys a big fat discount on that, and we're gonna say it's a competitive upgrade from I don't know, we'll invent a software from the Trotec laser driver. It's a competitive upgrade. So I'll make a Trotec 2021. I'll give you guys a deal on it, big fat discount. All right, that should add it right there.
All right, thank you. Do you need to power lip frame?
Power clip, possibly?
Yep.
Maybe need to power clip frame? Okay, I think power clip, maybe that makes a lot of sense, I guess. I still
the answer to that is no. I'm visualizing the frames that you showed. You dragged the frames in.
Uh-huh.
I don't think you didn't power clip those. If that's what
yeah, well, I mean the frames that I did for the gun stocks, I power clipped them all. I created a power clip into the frame, yes. And so, like I showed you at the beginning, went through it. But I guess you would need to more elaborate on your question on exactly what you mean. Is this for like I did the actual frame sample. I've done a lot of power clips, and so Marie, if you could. Ask the question again, maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you're referring to.
Yeah, I'll give you a nice pro tip though. If you have a power clip, because it doesn't display vector properties, think of it as like a bitmap embedded into a vector object. If you export that power clip as an Adobe Illustrator file, AI, and you re-import it back into CorelDRAW, it'll bring it back in as a vector. So that pattern comes back as vector. We have that automated in Smart Designer. We have a feature that says convert power clip to vector, but that's the kind of the workaround feature, and it works quite well on most images. Something super complicated, sometimes you run into issues, but it's a neat little trick. Just export as AI, bring it back in, import it, and you'll get the vector outlines for your power clip.
Interesting. Wonder why it does that.
Because I think the AI format can't handle the power clip. It's not a compatible function.
And so it automatically traces it.
Boom.
Huh. Interesting.
It's not even tracing. It just pulls the clip out. I don't know. It pulls the power clip out when it does the conversion.
Do with the filter.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly right.
Strange workaround, but it sounds effective. Another one for you, Craig. Can Stone Cut help sort the order of the objects?
Yes, it's amazing. And so what you do is you just drag and drop the graphic into Stone Cut. You go to sort with simulation, pick your sorting direction. You can preview it, and then you can manually change the order too by drag and drop. And once you've done the sort with simulation and you've applied it, then to simply drag and drop the image back into CorelDRAW, and all those objects are sorted with the correct HPGL order. I know that's kind of nerdy, but it's a wonderful feature of the software.
Can you convert an image of a person into the file to be engraved in Corel? Yes, of course. You can engrave anything you see on the screen can be engraved. The laser just sees images as a printer, and it just like a printer would print it onto a piece of paper, the laser would engrave it. Now, if you're talking about converting an image of like a photograph that is pixelated or converted to a dot pattern or a dither pattern, then yes, Corel will do all of that if you want by using some of their filter commands and stuff like that. Now, it doesn't have like the laser set like edge enhancement software like PhotoGrave type software, which is actually a filter software specifically designed for a material, which are suited for I need this photo to look good on a piece of leather or glass or wood. Those softwares are an additional cost that you would render through that and then bring back in. CorelDRAW will do some of that, but it's more of a manual process. I don't know, Roger may have some more feedback on this.
Yeah, it is a manual process. I wrote an article for Trotec magazine, which is a European publication. And I did a tutorial on taking an image, a photograph in PhotoPaint, and converting that for laser engraving. And I engraved that out on a 12 by 12 piece of granite, and it looked quite nice. So it definitely can be done. There are tutorials online that you can access. We don't have one on our Discovery Center, and that's a link I should probably throw out right now. For those that are looking for additional training with CorelDRAW, if you go to learn.corel.com, that's our Discovery Center. There's all sorts of tutorials up there that are both video and text-based or written that you can follow along with. We don't have one on there for photo engraving, but it certainly can be done. And if you want to reach out to me somehow, then I'll be more than happy to show you how to do it.
Yeah, Zumi, you should be using your convert to halftone function in Smart Designer to do all that. And you can adjust all the dot angles. You can adjust the offset of the dots, the size of the dot, the spacing, remove contrast, bump things up. That halftone feature, I'll do you a favor. I will showcase that in a great deal of detail on the March 1st webcast, so you have a clear understanding how to do it. And it's a pretty neat function. And you can do etching. Yeah.
I've also done a video of my own on prepping an image. It was done in CorelDRAW X4.
Whoa!
So it's a little bit.
I like that version.
Blast from the past. It's a blast from the past.
Yeah, it's a little bit dated, but that's up on YouTube. You can access that if you go to YouTube and just search for Roger WAM. You'll find it, and that'll walk you through PhotoPaint and how to prep that image for laser engraving.
Good.
And PhotoPaint is awesome. It really is.
Okay, next question. What's the difference between the boundary contour to create an outline cut and the preset optimized cut provided in the laser settings? Boundary is basically creating an outline around an object. And so like if you have a clip art with multiple components and you don't want to break it apart or weld it together and you just want a laser cut line, that's when I use the boundary. It's just a quick method of creating an outline around that. Craig showed the Smart Designer does that automatically as well. But the boundary, and then when I do a contour offset when I do a contour offset of that so that I can get a laser cut, because most of the time it just doesn't look good when you cut it right on the edge. And so that is why I would use that outline cut to preset is not provided in the laser settings. There's no real feature to do that because it really depends on what you want to do. Every person is different and how you want to do it. And so that is why I would use that feature.
One more thing about that, an important difference as well, is that with the create boundary, it will only do outer boundaries. So if you visualize the word moon, for example, you're not going to get the outline in the center of the O's where you would with the contour.
And you'll always get better results with contouring and boundary by combining objects. So like our contour feature automatically combines everything. So you get a nice clean line when you do that. That's a kind of a pro tip there.
Good to know. I didn't even know that one. I have some very old CorelDRAW files. Is there a utility that would allow me to convert the files from the earliest versions? This is definitely one for you, Roger.
Well, I'd like to know what version you're dealing with. We can leapfrog them. I think the oldest version, well, I mean, it depends on what version you currently have. That'll determine what we can open up. But it would depend on what version of files you're talking about. There's no utility out there that I'm aware of that will convert these old files, other than contracting somebody to take them and mass conversion. The only issue with mass conversion is files that have text in it. You'd want to make sure that you have the fonts, or you can settle with the fact that the fonts or the text may appear differently once they've been converted.
From my experience, CorelX7 is the magic version that converts all the old files, and we have a batch conversion utility on that that'll bulk convert them. I'd have to dig around to see if I could find it, but that's built into Smart Designer. But you can only go down, I think in 2020, you can go down to what version, Roger?
I don't know.
X7. I think it's X7.
X7 before you start to see any loss.
Yeah.
Now there is a batch conversion utility in CorelDRAW, and it has been there since CorelDRAW 6, not X6, but 6.
Okay.
So that's built into the application.
Macros, if you go to run macros, you can find it in there.
Macros run, and it's called File Converter. And that will allow you to convert it to a CDR and set what version you want a CDR, or if you took it back as a CMX. Now, a CMX is Presentation Exchange, is basically an uncompressed CDR file format. Doesn't have page information, but it'll certainly get all the information out. You can try that as well.
Yeah, and another thing that I do recommend too is keep some of your old versions so you can leapfrog, like Roger said. So I've got an X3 version still active. I've got an X7 version, and I've got the current version. I delete all the other ones, but I have enough on there to where I can go back, open it in that, and revert back further, and then kind of bring them back that way. A benefit of keeping a few of the other versions on your system, if you come across those type of really dated stuff often.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for helping us be successful. You're very welcome, Jerry.
All right. It looks like I'm going to need to drop off here because I booked a demo at the same time as.
Anyway, actually.
Oh, cool. All right. I got Greg messaging me. Hey, when are you going to?
Just one final question that I want to throw something out there, if I may. Larry's asking about why Corel 2020 shuts down when he's removing outlines around text and that sort of thing. My first thought would be to take a look at temp files. Make sure your system is running clean. I find a lot of people don't realize exactly what the temp files can do, what they can cause. And so checking those. The other thing you might want to try doing is resetting the defaults for the application.
Yeah, and I show you how to do that in my the last version. We go through that.
That fixes everything.
Yeah, fixes everything. Yeah. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me and helping me in this course today. Greg and Roger, you guys are always welcome back. Thank you so much for joining.
Appreciate that. It's good to see you again, Craig.
Yeah, thanks. And hopefully you guys will join us on the first. Just go to digitalartsolutions.com, register for Graphics Academy. You'll have access to the archive. We'll do a follow-up email, give you guys an opportunity to, I'm going to open up my big mouth. I'm going to do something really cool for all the Trotec people. I'm just not going to tell you what it is. It's going to be a big, fat, big deal. So that's it. Wait for the email. Okay.
All right. Wait for it. More to come. Right. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Thanks again for inviting us. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next Thursday next month.
All right. Take care.